All right, I'm winging this. Here's my review of King Sorrow by Joe Hill. This book came out a few months ago. Just got around to reading it. Don't feel bad about that. Sometimes it takes me some time to get around to something. Joe Hill, famously a horror author. The family relationship between him and Stephen King is always going to come up in any discussion of him. So it has to be mentioned. This is the son of Stephen King. I think quite a good writer in his own right. Sometimes better, sometimes equal, sometimes worse. He first came to my attention when his first book was coming out. There was some buzz around it. His second book, actually, his first novel, published novel, Heart-Shaped Box, which I read and enjoyed, and which led me to read his previous short story collection. That short story collection actually included one that has become a horror movie franchise. It included Black Phone, and it was kind of weird, but so I read that story at some point and kind of remembered it, and it didn't stick with me. It's not like there's a couple Stephen King stories that really I'll remember, probably will come back to me, right? But this one was in my head somewhere, jangling around all the loose keys in my skull. And then this movie trailer came out, and I was like, this is ripping something off. What is this ripping off? I've seen this plot before somewhere. I have seen this movie. And I only recently realized I had read the plot in 20th Century Ghosts, which is the book, and then remembered it, and then the trailer for the movie based on that story is what I was complaining about. So he's not ripping off his own story, he's just making a movie based on it, which is cool. So he's also been a prolific writer of comic books. Lock and Key comic, made into a Netflix series. He wrote, let me see if I can remember all of the Joe Hill novels. So there was The Fireman, which is a story about a fireman. So that's one where it's like a post-apocalypse novel where the world has ended because of a fungus that gives people the tendency to explode when they get emotional. He wrote Horns, which about someone with horns. He wrote a short story with his father, or another collection of short stories. Included one with his father, In the Tall Grass, that was on Netflix as well. He wrote, what else has he written? He wrote another one in there. Not popping into my brain. He wrote another one in there, but it's been 9 years since The Fireman. So it's been a delay, and apparently he's been doing life stuff. That's fine. But I think, that's one of the sad things with Joe Hill is he is I think probably one of the better modern horror authors. And he's never going to escape the comparison to his father because of the family relationship. So people will always say, well, yeah, he's written 5 bestsellers, but they're spaced apart. So they're he's only written 5 bestsellers by the time he's in his 50s, and by the time his dad was in his 50s, he'd written 30. And well, no one, this is regression to the mean. Stephen King is going to be, above average at writing speed. I think Joe Hill has said he's moving to now try to be a 1-book-a-year author. So, he will never catch up to the number of novels Stephen King wrote, but he's going to publish more. But so I think that would be kind of a very unfair set of expectations to live with, right? Like you spend your whole life where you're. Let me move back a little bit so you can see my whole head. You spend your whole life with like your dad being like world famous for doing something, and you figure out you love that too. That's also what you want to do with your life, and then after you try to do it, you're not successful for years, and then finally at 35 you like suddenly things start clicking. You get picked up to write a Marvel book, you get a book accepted, you get suddenly you have like your tide is rising, and then people figure out like you were using a pseudonym to avoid comparisons to your father. Like I feel bad because he is such a good writer. He deserves to stand on his own, right? So all of that is like my issues being transferred onto Joe Hill. So King Sorrow, first book in 9 years, and is not exactly a horror novel. There are horror elements. So if you're going into it with the expectation that this is going to be like the scariest novel ever written, it's not that. It has fantasy elements, it has thriller elements, it kind of jumps genres at a couple points in time. It's like a love story. So go into it with that understanding that like this book touches on several genres, but it's not defined by just being a horror novel. And I think it's Joe Hill's best work, and probably the best horror or horror adjacent book I've read in the last year, at least. So this is where we start getting into spoilers. So the premise of this. So if you don't want to be spoiled, pause me and read this book, and then come back. I listen to the audiobook. That's like cheating because I have 2 hours of driving back and forth to work, so I can get through books kind of quick. It's like a 24-hour audiobook listen if you listen at 1x speed. But apparently the book itself is like 900 pages, so it's a doorstopper. And this is again inviting comparisons to his father, who works in the same genre, also writes exceptionally large books. So again, this is part of why these comparisons are made. So this book is about it's about a group of 6 protagonists. It kind of starts with one of them, Arthur Oakes, who is a college senior who is kind of bookish. His mother's in prison, and in the process of visiting his mother in prison, he sees someone else who's not going to be allowed into the prison because of her sweatshirt or her t-shirt, and so she can cover that t-shirt up, he lends her his sweatshirt. And then because of that, through a series of coincidences, that family to whom he lent the sweatshirt gets into a fight with his mother in the prison. His mother is not a bad person. She got into a bad situation, but she was justly imprisoned for her role in someone's death. And then Arthur, being a good person, feels bad about this. He doesn't want his mother to be in trouble. He wants her to get out of prison. But then these people whom he caused to be in a fight threaten his mother because their mother is in prison with his mother, and they essentially coerce him into stealing rare books from the school library he works at part-time. And so they're going to sell these rare books to an antiquarian book dealer, and he is sort of forced to do this because they will hurt his mother. And along the way, he makes some friends, and those friends are mostly other college students. There's one high school senior, so 4 years younger than him, whom he has developed romantic feelings for. And so Arthur and this group of friends are interested in the occult. And one of the friend group's father had worked for The Shop from Stephen King and was a spy and had worked on this method of summoning ghosts where you imagine a ghost to be real, and then you do a seance with this ghost you have imagined that was never a real person, but through your belief in this thing that is not real, you bring it into existence. And so they decide to attempt such a seance with King Sorrow, which is a dragon that is described in one of the rare books that they steal, which is, of course, bound in human skin. And, of course, it works, and King Sorrow makes them a deal. King Sorrow will kill their target, which are the family that are bothering them on Easter, and in exchange they give him a human heart, which there's some symbolism I haven't teased out yet in this ritual, where all the members of the group remember a different item as being what they use to do the seance with. So they do kind of like a scrying thing where they have a helmet filled with water, and they're staring into the water and seeing the dragon that they're going to summon. So they're summoning a dragon. Or another person uses a conch shell, and another person uses a mirror. And so they all remember it differently. But regardless of what they remember, they have this sort of a dissociative episode. All right, is that a little better? I had to take a call and took the opportunity to add some lights and change my lens out to a prime. So hopefully this looks a little better. Anyway, where was I? Oh, so they summon a dragon, and they set it against the two of the three family members who have been coercing them. The one seems to be like more of a good person in a bad situation. Her sister is forcing her to do this and is prostituting her. And so they make a deal with the dragon. The dragon will kill these two people on Easter, and in exchange they give it a human heart that they symbolically take from a ghost, I think. I have to go back and like re-listen and figure out the mechanics of exactly what went on there. But yeah, so basically, they kill a ghost and take its heart and feed it to the dragon, and the dragon is tricking them. Of course, the dragon does kill those two people, but then a year later, the dragon says, "Okay, who's the next person I'm going to kill?" And they're like, "What?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't just this Easter; it's every Easter." So now, the rest of the story is that they have now this curse where dragon expects them to pick someone for it to kill, or it will kill them. One of them is like this rich kid, and he's thinking, "Oh, this is great. I can now kill anyone I want." And so he sees this as a way to get power, because he can use this violence to kill terrorists or people who are going to do bad things, and he can manipulate world circumstances to make himself powerful and wealthy. And one of them, Gwen, who is Arthur's love interest, uses it to help euthanize an old man, but in the process she makes a deal with the dragon where she will have to stop dating Arthur or he will die. So dragon is crafty. She gets tricked into that deal, and she has to... So there's sort of this tragic star-crossed lover thing. And then Others sort of hand off their choice to Colin, who is the one who sort of gradually is revealed to be the antagonist of the book, the real antagonist of the book, who is using the dragon to enrich himself and has been manipulating events and manipulating people the whole time. So, Colin, the bad guy, who else? So there's a couple of the other characters. Gwen is the daughter of someone who cleans at the school where the other kids go, so she sees herself as more lower class, economic class than them. Then there are Donna and Donovan. Donna is sort of traumatized by seeing her best friend kidnapped by child predators as a child, and Donovan is her brother who is devoted to trying to clean up after her and fix the things she does. Allie is gay, but it's at that point she's not willing to be out, so she goes to conversion therapy and ends up marrying Donovan, even though she really is in love with Donna. Allie isn't described as having that many personality traits, and then the initial protagonist, Arthur, is kind of absent from a big part of the book. He goes off to Oxford in England to study dragons, and comes back later in the book. So the book is set as like this series of sort of genre set pieces at different points in their lives. Like he'll have an interlude every 5 years or so. So at one point, at some point, like the dragon is like, well, this person you told me to kill is getting on a plane. If you don't kill him first and get on the plane, I will destroy the plane and the 400 people will die. So the dragon doesn't care who he kills to get on the way. And this is what the central metaphor of the book is. When you employ a dragon, violence, people will get hurt. And you can't always know if they're good or bad people. And you can't direct violence to just the good people, because violence kind of has a mind of its own and thoughts of its own, and it spreads and it's hungry for suffering. So this dragon they employ ends up killing people they don't want to die, and they end up trusting the people who tell them, no, I'll make the choice for you. And people end up suffering because that person is making the choices in his own self-interest. So the metaphor here is kind of about living in a society where violence is employed upon our behalf, nominally to make us safer or make our lives better. And we're told we're only hurting the bad people, or we're told to accept that good people are hurt to get to the bad people, and we don't have any other choice. So we're told, well, this drone strike mostly killed terrorists, and only a few families with innocent members in those families are wiped out. And we're told, well, we bombed a hospital, but the hospital was harboring a terrorist. We're told, well, it was a prison, but everyone deserved to be in the prison, right? They all did bad things, so they deserved to die. And all of these atrocities that are committed in our names weigh on us as a culture, or weigh on us as people, individuals, because we've been forced into this bargain. So the end of the book is, how do you slay this dragon? How do you stop this violence? And it says there's a few ways. It suggests that someone with a pure soul can be drawn up from the long dark in the manner of a sword. So this is tying back to Arthurian myth with the sword in the stone. Arthur has been killed by Colin, and Arthur's soul is drawn as a sword. They're using it to fight the dragon. But ultimately what happens is Gwen is injured, and her blood tastes like suffering, tastes like sorrow, and King Sorrow is hungry for suffering, and her blood gets on King Sorrow's tail. And so King Sorrow bites on his own tail and finds it delicious because it's seasoned with suffering. So he starts swallowing himself in the manner of Ouroboros. And so that the symbolism of this is that violence, being hungry for sorrow, inevitably turns on itself and devours itself. Which makes sense. It's sad, but it makes sense. It's true enough. But it's also, I think, going and reading the Reddit threads about this, I think people are also having a good time just treating it as like an adventure, like not even at the symbolic level, like, well, kind of like what are the actions that are happening? People are enjoying that. So that's good too. And so this one, like, you can look at it and it's big. I don't think you should be intimidated by the size of this book. Like, this book is like a page turner, or, it's an audiobook, so it's non-fast forwarder. It's a fast read. It's a good read. I enjoyed it, and I recommend it to you, others. Read the book.